A lot of people say mind control is fake, but that's not true at all. The CIA would brainwash people by beating them, raping them, torturing them beyond belief, more than you could ever imagine, to the point where their brains would be forced to splinter into multiple personalities. That way they can suppress the trauma from the trauma they're going through and the pain and the horror that they're put through. And what's known as their handlers would then be able to reconstruct and restructure it together and reprogram them. And they use various things like opiates and psychedelics, all different types of torture techniques that you could ever imagine. And so you're left with a completely splintered personality, up to 50 different personalities. Each personality would contain memory that your normal conscious awareness would not remember and not know. And each personality can be brought out with certain catchphrases and words. Like one time I was watching an episode of Oprah, of all things, and she had this lady on there with 24 different personalities. Her brain created the splintered personalities to suppress some trauma that she had in her life. She had her therapist using various techniques like hypnosis and other techniques, and even some drugs could bring out each personality with certain catchphrases. They trained each splintered personality to come out with just saying a few words, just like the CIA handlers do. And it's super easy to do mind control, more easy than one would think. For one, if you're under the influence of any type of psychoactive compound, you are already susceptible to information, whether it's true or not. Your mind is so open and accepting of all kinds of different realities. And it's like with the substance scopolamine, derived from ginseng weed, also known as the devil's breath, and datura plant, and a couple other plants, was one of their main go-tos. If you take extracted scopolamine and dose the person, you can literally tell somebody to do anything and they will gladly do it consciously without any fights, but forget about it shortly after. You have to be really careful using scopolamine though, because you can easily overdose and die on it. I even had some extracted scopolamine for many years a while back. And there's a huge variety of other substances that can be used for brainwashing. I'm sure the CIA used many different ones and played around with it and perfected the art. Just dose somebody and set them in a programming, pushing a certain message or a specific idea or agenda, and they will believe it and they will do it. If you want somebody to shoot up a school, let's say, for you, you just splinter their personality like the CIA does, and then you put information in one of those splintered personalities, and then one day you can just give them a call, and then you give them that phrase, and boom, you bring out the personality that you had developed in them, and they'll carry out any mission you have for it. And a lot of MK Ultra survivors and people that's come out, they've said they use a lot of Disney images and influences in their programming, which is it doesn't surprise me at all. But I think it's crazy how half the world believes that MK Ultra is just a theory, or it's fake, or it's a joke, when it really was an actual thing. The Central Intelligence Agency experimented on humans. It was intended to identify and develop drugs and procedures to be used in interrogations and torture in order to weaken the individual to force confessions through mind control. It was a real thing. It was worked through by the Organization of Scientific Intelligence Division in the CIA. The project coordinated with the Special Operations Division of the U.S. Army and Chemical Corp. The program began in the early 1950s, was officially sanctioned in 1953, was reduced in 1964, and then further continued through 1967 and officially halted in 1973, supposedly. More like they just mastered the art of fucking secrecy and hid it. The program engaged in many illegal activities, including the use of unwitting citizens and U.S. citizens and Canadian citizens, and probably more that they don't know about, as its test subjects, which led to controversy regarding its legitimacy and the other higher-ups. The MK Ultra program used numerous methodologies to manipulate people's mental states and alter brain functions, including superstitious activities, playing with their mind in many ways, administration of drugs, and various chemical compounds. Beating, torture, sexual abuse, isolation, sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation, verbal abuse, as well as various forms of torture. MK Ultra was broad, with research undertaken at 80 institutions, including 44 colleges and universities, as well as hospitals, prisons, pharmaceutical companies, and even therapy lounges. The CIA operated through these institutions using front organizations, although sometimes top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement. Apparently, some of the test subjects that they liked to use most were younger people and females, because apparently females were more susceptible to the MK Ultra programming for some reason. One of their main ingredients, of course, they tried to use LSD, or lysergic acid diethylamide, but found out it didn't work so well, because instead of making them susceptible to the programming, it actually woke them up, which was kind of funny. So they kind of strayed away from LSD and started using other chemicals instead. And new evidence and research examinations of evidence suggest that Charles Manson's connections to the CIA-funded LSD research projects and other chemical research projects that could indicate the agency played a really big, sinister role in the 1969 Manson family murders. Doesn't surprise me at all. And the CIA funded a chemist agent to teach radical groups how to set up labs and produce a variety of drugs, mostly lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD. The plan was to create a brainwashing confusion epidemic among substance users and lower-class people. It instead fueled the chemical revolution, breaking down all barriers of basic conditioned construct, creating open-minded individuals who started questioning the government instead of running to them for help. It backfired on them. Then, once they seen it didn't work, they backtracked and started performing raids of these labs and locking up the chemists, who was estimated to have been responsible for around 30 million plus hits. They turned the world on.